Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte, and we are here live at the Build studio in New York City. I'm going to dive right into this one. Monday, March 26th at 10/9 Central, National Geographic will premiere the 10-part cinematic event, One Strange Rock. In it, award-winning filmmaker Darren Aronofsky and award-winning producer Jane Root unearth the extraordinary story of our planet and do so through the unique lens of the rare few who have seen Mother Earth from a distance. Here in just a moment to talk to us all about this absolutely insane achievement, executive producer Jane Root and showrunner Arif Nur Muhammad are here. How about that, guys? That's pretty amazing right there, right? That's pretty amazing right there. But they are not alone. You see, according to National Geographic, in the entirety of human history, only 556 people have been to space. And we people here have 4 of them in the building with us today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. This is incredible. Nicole Stott is here, logged 104 days in space, became the first astronaut to paint in space. Chris Hadfield is here, first Canadian to command the ISS and known for being the only human to perform David Bowie's Space Oddity while actually in space. Jerry Lininger is here, survived the most severe fire ever aboard an orbiting spacecraft and spent nearly 5 months on the Russian space station Mir. And Mike Massimino flew on 2 space shuttle missions to repair the Hubble Space Telescope and is the first person to ever tweet from space. Humbled, honored, there are no words. I'm freaking pumped. Make some noise for our guest, please. One more, just a little bit more noise. A little bit more noise. It's unbelievable. Now, before we bring them out here and we kick this thing off, I believe we do have a trailer for the show, so we're going to take a look at that. Luke, let's go ahead and run that clip.
I am going to tell you about the most incredible place. And you know what? You're walking on it. Our planet is literally bursting with life.
There's so much activity, and our planet is right in the middle of it.
I really wish that everyone could see the world the way that I've had a chance to see it.
The strangest place in the whole universe might just be right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, you better make an absurd amount of noise for our guests right now. Come on. Chris, James, I got everybody that's here from One. Come on, guys. This is unbelievable. One Strange Rock. Everybody, congratulations. I was saying it downstairs. I will say it again. I cannot say it enough. This show is absolutely phenomenal. I wrote down some crazy stats just about the production alone. We're going to dive right in here. 139 shoots, 6 continents, 45 countries. You were on the ISS. You were 1,600 feet below ground, 286 miles straight up into orbit. You filmed everything, everywhere. So I want to start, Jane, Arif, how does a project of this scale begin? Where does it start?
It starts with a little conversation that National Geographic had with me and some colleagues, and they said, we're kind of thinking about a show about the Earth. Go away and think about it. And we did. And that's how it began.
Casting a bit of a wide net.
Totally, totally. They were just like, think about the Earth. And that's, and we went away and we looked at both scientific stuff and really looked at the big new theories about how the Earth works. And we also pulled together a kind of image book of extraordinary new ways people were filming the Earth, from tiny microphotography to images from outer space.
So that's fascinating. Oh, go on. If you were
No, I was going to say, I think, a big idea like that, in the end, what you need to do is find an entry point. that's accessible for the audience, because obviously life, the universe, and everything, you know, where do you start? So I think a big breakthrough for us actually came in a few months into the process when we started thinking about how we were going to tell the story, who was going to tell the story. And, you know, traditionally in these kind of shows, you'll have somebody, like in the UK, we have Sir David Attenborough, who, you know, everyone knows if his voice is on it, that's authenticity, and that's expertise, and that's knowledge. And so we were thinking, who could that person be? And then we suddenly thought, it's not one person. It's actually, you know, a select few who'd seen the Earth from space, who'd seen the bigger picture, and who had an understanding, and had that they were transformed, if you like, by that experience, and they were able to convey that wonder about our strange rock with authenticity. And that was the thing that these guys brought to it. And I think that's been what's elevated this series into a new territory for everyone.
Absolutely, and I do want to dig into that and talk about when you guys were all brought into the process and what you thought. But there is one thing that you had mentioned, Jane, that I want to tap into before we move on, which was you were looking at the different ways in which things were being filmed, because there is some extraordinary. There's tons of imagery within this show that is just unbelievable. And I always love to ask, was that in your head that I wanted to capture these types of images, or was it what kind of images are being captured and how does that impact our story? Was it technology or story?
It was always both at the same time, and that's really important because we want this to be a show that you can both watch and really dig into the science and kind of want to know where all this comes from and what incredible things does it tell us. We also, quite honestly, don't mind if you almost watch with the sound turned down and just bathe in the images.
You're going to say that in front of your moderators?
Absolutely. It's cool. It's cool. It's like, you know, this is a show that's about, it's both your head and your heart. It's an emotional, sensory experience as well as one that connects with your brain. And that's really important to us.
For sure, for sure. All right, well, let's get into it. We'll start with Chris, and we'll go around. When you were brought into it, how was it explained to you? What did you think of the idea of the project? How did you get involved? We'll go around.
I had a chance to fly in space 3 times. And it is a unbelievably rich experience. The sensory input, the amount of stuff you're exposed to, and then you're left with the question afterwards of how do you let other people see what it was like? How do you share something so incredibly different? There's hardly anybody's ever done it before. And we all try different ways. But to be approached by National Geographic, who has a tremendous reputation that I grew up with, you know, with magazines, showing me the world. They have a terrific pedigree and reputation. But then the way that they were planning to do it as well, to show not just pretty pictures of the world, but how the world works, and compare that to how it looked to us, is just an extremely compelling invitation. And I worked with Jane and Company for over 2 years, and we had the big premiere here in town last night. 1,200 people there, and everybody just loved it. I mean, it's a really beautiful way to better understand our planet. So I'm really glad I got to be part.
For sure, for sure. What do you think?
Well, I think, you know, I only had the chance to fly twice in space, but I will tell you, you're no. You know, would love to go back anytime. Maybe we could. This would be an awesome crew, by the way. But I think that I don't think it matters if you're there for, you know, a year or you're there for a day. I mean, what, an hour, a minute, when you look out that window, just the overwhelmingly impressive beauty of it is something you can't be prepared for. And I love what Jane said about the head and the heart, because to me, that's what I felt when I was looking through the window, when I was experiencing Earth from space. It's like, yeah, I'm seeing it with my eyes, processing it with my head, but it's in my heart now. It's part of me. And I think in the simplest way, when I came home, what I felt, the two major things were, wow, I live on a planet, and we're all Earthlings. Yeah. And that sounds really simple. We know it, we learn it in school, but we don't consider it, I think, every day. And I think through One Strange Rock, everyone has the opportunity to be reintroduced to our planet in a way that is just spectacular for sure. It presents the science, but it connects you in that way with your heart too. And you will walk away. I live on a planet and I'm an Earthling. And the decisions you make and the choices become different when you're thinking about that on a more regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. No, it is a moving experience. And even as someone who loves these types of shows, these types of documentaries. I'm very familiar with Sir David Attenborough, all these things. There's still stuff that I didn't know, that I was blown away by. And I was like making assumptions like, well, of course, that blows into the rainforest. Oh, no, wait, it does what? Like, I was like having my mind blown continuously watching this thing, and it's so beautifully done. Jerry, I would love to hear your thoughts when you got brought on board.
You just heard, two really talented people, and so I heard, hey, we got some, I heard the astronauts that they're inviting to be part of it, and I said, if I can be part of that gang, I'll be part of that gang. So I'll just leave it as simple as that, because I think it was said beautifully here, but I said, this is a world-class production, incredible creative people, and maybe us astronauts are a little too, logos, too much logic and methodically working through things, and so now we got the creative brains to tell these stories. And it's stories we want to tell because it's an incredible journey into space.
For sure. And Mike, next group question, I'll start with you so you don't have to find a way to say the same thing everybody else said, but differently. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I was going to say it in a different language.
You could do it.
And
yeah,
I was going to.
absolutely.
Now, you're not going to answer. I don't have to say that same question. I don't know I'm going to answer because I was going to answer it much better than all three of them combined. But since I'm not answering, no, I forget it. It's gone. It went out of my head.
Говорит по-русски, может быть,
But
говорит по-русски.
I'm not even going to attempt now because it's gone. But I know Jane for a while. We got a chance to work together on another Nat Geo project years ago, and they called me, and I was very happy to be a part of it. But go ahead with your question. I probably won't be able to answer this one as well as I would have answered the last one.
You crushed it. Go ahead. Well, one of the things...
Why do you have these New York guys on the show,
I'm in New York, Jerry. When we do this thing...
Midwesterners.
Yeah, when we do this in the middle of Michigan and in a lake or something, we're in New York. Get with the program.
All right, so my follow-up to that, we touched a little bit upon this. You have all had this experience of being able to view our rock, our world, in this macro sense, and you've gained this sort of deeper understanding, this deeper feeling, this relationship with our planet because of it. And now, what I love about the show is we get some of that macro view, but it goes hard in the other direction too, and in the micro view down to like micro, bacterial, like organisms, things. When I say you shot everything everywhere, you absolutely did. One, we'll eventually get to, I want to know how you guys feel in terms of how close did we get to nailing that. But before we do that, Jane and Reef, I want to talk to you guys about navigating the scale of that, navigating these different, having to shoot this big and that big, and just how you sort of mapped that out and managed that process.
Well, one of the big things we wanted to show in this series was that everything is connected from the big to small. So that was always going to be our destination. And there are many ways of doing that. You can use camera technology that's been recently introduced that's able to shoot high speed, motion control in a way that you can capture a raindrop. You can go around a raindrop as it's falling. So you can do things like that. And sometimes actually the innovations are very left field and very surprising. So one of the things that we really explore in the first episode is where oxygen comes from. And the reality is that oxygen is produced by microorganisms, by cyanobacteria, by diatoms and algae. They're tiny things. And, that oxygen, 50% of the oxygen we breathe is actually from that source. And yet you never see it happen. So how do you capture it? And we'd set up some algae that was producing oxygen using special camera technology to try and capture that moment. And it was really hard. We weren't seeing it. The bubbles were too small and popping too quickly of the oxygen that was being produced. So one of our team, a specialist cameraman, had the idea of old school technology, quite literally. He got some snails. He got the snails to crawl over the rock that the algae was on. They left a trail of mucus. And then as the bubbles formed, the mucus just held them together for that fraction longer, so we were able to capture it on camera. So, it's this extraordinary thing where, yes, of course, technology helps, but actually sometimes lateral thinking and clever solutions to capturing things that had never been seen before.
Sometimes you just need a snail.
Sometimes all it takes is a snail.
Yeah. The other thing I think to say is that we were able to film on the International Space Station. Paolo Nespoli, who's an Italian astronaut from ESA, and we worked with NASA and Peggy Whitson, who was up there at the same time, and we filmed extraordinary sequences in space that had never been seen before. So we went literally from, blockbuster movie stuff down to the tiniest moment.
Yeah, it's not old stock footage or anything from other things. This is all new footage that we haven't seen before, and it's all incredible. Mike, you were at the premiere last night, I presume? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So talk to me. Let's go back to that question I really wanted to answer. Obviously, we can't replicate the moment of you physically being in space and observing the planet with the naked eye. But how close emotionally for you watching it on this scale with a giant audience, how close did we get? How did you feel watching it play back for I presume, the first time?
Yeah, I'd seen bits and pieces of the program that was shown last night, but it was the first time that I'd seen it all put together, and this is sort of a special version that we were able to see last night. I think it's interesting when you ask the question because you can see the images, and now especially with the great cameras we have on board and the high def stuff, it can portray the image pretty well. Compared to the real thing. It's not quite there, of course, but a lot of what you miss, when I thought about this last night, a lot of what we've missed before when we watch some of these programs or movies or whatever, even though it's shot really well and so on, is that you miss the emotional part of it. Like you can look up at the Sistine Chapel, but it's actually a picture of it, but it's an emotional experience when you're actually there. So I hope that's what we add, is some of that emotion of what it was like to view the planet and the stories behind that, what we were feeling, what we saw, and hopefully we can bring that emotional component to it, because that's the thing that you don't see by just watching. So if you turn the voice down, you wouldn't be able to hear. But that's what hopefully that's what we're able to add, is that experience. And I thought it was really wonderfully done, great program last night, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of them.
Was Will Smith there last night? Did he make it out?
No.
No.
He couldn't make it.
Yeah, of course he's filming somewhere. Guy's always working. Big Willie style. All right, well, to that end, though, he does a phenomenal job as sort of a through line from every episode, but you each have an episode where you sort of lead the way. And, of course, there's bits and pieces from everybody kind of cut through, but each episode, like we were saying earlier, Chris, yours was titled Gasp. Nicole, you had Storm. Jerry, I haven't seen yours yet. It's a little later. It's entitled Survival. And, Mike, you had Terraform. I'm wondering, did you know going in what your episode was going to be? Did they just tell you to come in, tell your story, and we'll find a place within our story? How did that look?
I heard some of those same titles, except mine was called Death at the beginning. And I said,
That's true.
How did I
That's
get
true.
Death?
That's true.
I mean, I got the short straw on that one. But it ends up Survival.
Yeah, Dr. Death.
Yeah. So, I got Survival. I said, okay, that sounds a little bit better. Survival, because, I had a rough time up in space. I had, as you mentioned, a bad fire. And so personal death. But then we started looking at death of, different organisms, the dinosaurs. 66 million years ago, you got an impact meteorite hitting the Earth, and the dinosaurs get wiped out, and 75% of life gets knocked out. But also, the little mammals emerge from that, and now they have a niche, and they take off, and eventually we got human beings. So there's life, there's death. It all is, I guess, the circle of life. My daughter just did Lion King on figure skates, so I got this circle of life playing in my brain. But it is a circle of life. And, I've gotten to the point where I say, hey, if if the building falls down on me right now, I've already done the things I want to do in my life to some degree.
That's why it was
4
death.
children. Maybe not the rest of it. Yeah, just a light bank on me then. I say, I've kind of launched my DNA, if you want to say that. My DNA is off to the next generation, and I've molded them as best I could. They're young adults now, and Chris has family like that also, and you kind of say, okay, I kind of did my job. And one of the sequences has monarch butterflies, emerging, and mayflies emerging, and, they have 24 hours to mate, lay the eggs. They've done their job, I guess, to keep the species going at that point. So it was an interesting, fascinating thing, and I got sexual reproduction in mine also, so I got kind of the sexy one.
Better than dying.
Yeah.
There's a lot to
the
unpack
circle?
in there, Jerry, but
I'll leave it.
there's one bit that I do want to ask. When I was reading up some quotes from Darren Aronofsky saying that he found a commonality amongst every astronaut was coming home with this perspective, with this observation of having seen Earth this way. And I'm curious, you had said you had a rough time while you were up there. A bit of an understatement. It was when I was reading about it, probably one of the roughest I had read. Did you, in trading notes with your fellow astronauts, did that experience color that perception of Earth and of what you saw when you look back when you came home?
You know, I think every astronaut that comes back, I saw John Young when he did the test flight of the shuttle, got out, and he's a real stoic kind of guy, Navy test pilot kind of guy. He got out of that space shuttle and he literally kissed the ground. Yeah. And so I think, you know, it's no place like home, like the title says, and it's really true. And so, you know, you got family at home, things like that, and it's good to get back to planet Earth. You know, it's a privilege to be up there. You got a different perspective now, and you appreciate things here on the planet. And you know, air, it's all around us. I mean, just some basic fundamental stuff. It doesn't rush out and suffocate you in a rapid decompression. And you don't have to make the oxygen. You know, I mean, what a great life we have.
Yeah, you really do learn to appreciate it. Now, Nicole, earlier you said it'd be nice to make it 3 and go back. How much time has to pass between the kissing of the no place like home and the, man, I really want to get back up there?
None, really. I think, you know, for me, I mean, you get the question sometimes, what was the most difficult thing about being in space is that, you know, your family isn't with you. I mean, I think that's kind of a simple statement too, but man, if you could go back, if my husband and son could be there, which I know they would love, you know, I look around me, I know families here, they would love to do that. That would be outstanding, though I would go back by myself too. There's something about it. I think if you go there and get home and don't have a desire to go back, there's something didn't happen right. There's something about it that, you know, you talk about separating from things. We need to separate sometimes. And when you do that, you make a connection like you never can right in the middle of it, I don't think. And so that the opportunity to separate from Earth that way, to feel more connected than I do, you know, most of the time right here in the middle, it's just, and you want to share it. I mean, you absolutely want to share it. And everybody finds their way, you know, I want to paint and do that. You know, I want to reach audiences that don't know we have a space station, that don't know all the things we're doing in space to improve life here on Earth. And then flip it around for that Earthling and Earth appreciation that so beautifully comes from this show too. And like you said, from the macro down to the micro level, and going to places that almost seem like they're on another planet, you know, otherworldly, and yet they exist right here on Earth with us. And things living in those places that we could never survive, but allowing us, you know, through the show to understand that a little bit and how it, you know, impacts this circle of life is, you know, as Jerry said, that's pretty impressive.
We're running out of time. I got to go to audience in a little bit, but I'm literally made of questions here. There's one I really wanted to ask that I'm curious about, and I'll open it up to anybody, however you want to answer this one here. When you come back, all right, when you've come back down to Earth and you've had this experience, you've been through this thing, this transformative ride, and you've seen the world for what it is, and then nobody else has, and you observe the rest of the world, and there's so much. Maybe it's something as silly as flat earthers or whatever kind of ignorance that is pervasive out there that you see and you go, guys, none of this matters. How do you handle what I imagine to be a very frustrating struggle internally? I've seen this. If only I could communicate to them that none of this matters. They don't need to fight over these things. What is that like? What is that frustration like?
I think it's actually the opposite. If you have had a magnificent meal, like a wonderful piece of black forest cake that is as rich and wonderful as food can be, that doesn't somehow mean that all the rest of the food that exists isn't worth eating, or that somehow you're disappointed by the rest of life. You've just been privy to a richness that improves who you are, understands how things can be. And in fact, you come back from space with a much more realistic and I think eternally optimistic view of the world. You see the world for a thing that has survived for over 4 billion years. There's been life on this planet without a break for 4 billion years. I mean, life is tough. The world is tough as nails. And yeah, there are horrific things happen, asteroid impacts and things, but the planet's still here. Life is still here. And to see the planet rejuvenated daily as you come around, but also when you're on the space station long enough to go partway around the solar system, you can watch the whole world swap ends of seasons. And I was on it for almost 6 months, so I watched winter and summer swap in the world. And it was like watching the world take one breath out of 4.5 billion years of breaths, watching it rejuvenate itself yet again. And and it puts things in its proper perspective. So if someone wants to stand up and yell something that they don't understand at the top of their lungs, it just makes it really easy to ignore them because they're saying something nonsensical and they're not making the effort to try and understand. And one of the huge attractions of this project was that it's not only visually seductively, beautifully compelling, but the science behind it is fascinating. You learn stuff that you didn't know, and to put those two together in a way that people learn about where they're from, to me, that's a wonderful project to be in.
Wow, very beautifully said. Thank you for that, Chris. How far away do you think we are? Like I just saw today, I think it was, scientists announced billion years for a galaxy to complete a full rotation, regardless of its size, right? So we've observed this. And I read that and I was thinking, this is fascinating because there's so much that we don't know that we're still trying to figure out. But as I watch this show and I think of all the years it took for us to accumulate this knowledge, all of this understanding, and I see, oh, just today we found out it takes this long for the galaxy. How far away do you think are we from one strange galaxy? How many, will we see it in our lifetimes? What do you think?
I think hopefully sooner than we expect, but it's probably still a while. But I think one of the exciting things that's happening now is that we have not just NASA and other governments going to space, but we also have private companies going there, and they've been very successful in making those steps toward commercializing and privatizing space for real, and I think it's going to get very exciting. And so I don't know, prediction of where that's going to happen. I hope we can get to the moon, back to the moon relatively soon, and then go from there to Mars, or maybe take a straight shot to Mars. We'll figure that out, I guess. But hopefully getting and setting some sort of settlement or base on another place, I think, is going to be the next step here. But I think that after seeing the planet, and I think this is shown in this, is talked about in the show as well, that no matter where we go, there probably is. I think there is life out there somewhere else. Yeah. Look at all the possibilities, billions of galaxies, billions of stars in each one of those planets around most of those stars. The chances that we're the only planet with life on it is probably unlikely, but I do think we have the nicest planet. I think we have the most beautiful one. And once we start discovering these other ones, or we meet other beings from other places, I think we're going to win the beauty contest when it comes to the planet contest. So.
Let me ask you a potentially silly question, all right? Now, having just said that,
You're the right guy, let me tell you, yeah.
Was there ever a moment for any of you?
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You're up there, super quiet. You know what you can see, you know what you believe, but there's a small part of your mind that's terrified that at some point you're just going to hear. So I can turn around like there's somebody out there. Like, do you ever get paranoid when you're up there and you think of stuff like that? Or no, you have to focus on the immediate, the moment in front of you, and not allow your mind to drift. I mean, I'm curious, especially if you're up there painting, you're engaging in an artistic activity, the very foundation of which you have to allow your mind to sort of relax and drift. And just what it's like up there in those moments, in those quiet moments.
I think there's I don't know about the rest of you guys, I won't speak for you, but I don't know, there's almost a hopefulness of that, of something so surprising presenting itself to you. I don't know if I thought about it at that extreme, really, but I mean, I remember every time looking out the window being surprised. And it didn't matter if I was looking at the same place again for the however many, you don't want to pull the visor down on the window. You absolutely don't. And the night that, I think everybody's experienced the first time you see this shooting star below you, it's incredible. You're, what is that? Because you're so used to looking up and seeing it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm surprised again by something. You float down, get your crewmate. Yeah, that's what that was, Nikki. Why didn't you know that? Well, no one told me. And then you want to see one again, and you don't. And then you think about the beauty of what you just saw. And you also think about wow, I'm really glad I saw that because that means it didn't hit my spaceship kind of thing, which would not have been a good thing, Jerry, And, but the surprises are endless. The sound of the station, the smell of things, all of that, there's surprise in that, and you're hopeful for all of these surprises. And I think it would be a little bit startling, yes, if somebody floated in front of some other being floated, knocked on the cupola window while you're looking out and, in your transcendent moment. But, hey. Got to be open to it, I guess.
There are other things to worry about. Yeah. I think it's a knock on. There are so many other things that you need to concentrate on. That knock on a door would be kind of interesting, but
you're welcome.
The other stuff going. Why not?
Well, I'm going to stick my neck out, but how many people think I saw a UFO when I was up there? You know, and I did. I mean, I saw things in the true sense of the word, unidentified flying objects. Don't take me out of context with that first quote. I had no aliens knocking, but, you know, I saw stuff where I'd call my crewmates over, Stoetta, you know, what the heck is that? And we'd look, and sometimes it was metallic, and it was, you know, looked like a spoon, if you will, off in the distance. And the problem in space, good luck figuring out if it's a really small object close by, something that floated out of the airlock like a spoon, or is it something 100,000 miles away that's the size of a big spacecraft? And it's very hard to distinguish that. Usually it was, you know, something you could kind of explain, probably an ice chunk off the external tank or something like that. But you'd see things, as you're saying, Nicole, that, you know, you go, wow, that's cool. I don't know what that was exactly, but it's not a satellite because it's, you know, doing something different, and it's pretty cool to see something like that. And you definitely, just like when you see something and discover something, it's like, hey, everyone, come on, I don't care what you're doing. Get over here and take a look. What do you think that thing is?
That's pretty wild. Well, that's one of the things that's always fascinated me is that as vast and as immense as it is and impossible to comprehend what's out there, you know, I've always thought and I've always firmly believed, well, we can't possibly be alone, you know, because it's just so big, surely. But what was funny is as I was watching this and you go through all of like the miracles and happy accidents and like there was one bit where if the meteor for the dinosaur showed up one day earlier or later and it would have landed in the water, the whole thing would have been completely different. It's like, all right, well, maybe, I don't know, as big as it is, what are the odds all of these things would happen exactly this way someplace else? I honestly don't know.
Yeah, it's a series of miracles that occurred to get us to where we are now. Yeah. And that's the story that's told here, which is really amazing.
It's beautifully done. All right, last question before I turn it over to the audience. I'm really, really curious about this one. This is an easy one, all right? Least favorite or most difficult subject when you were in school as a kid? Hardest thing? Or least favorite one? Let's start with you, Chris. We'll make it easy.
I'm not a very good drawer or painter, so that art. I wasn't very good.
Wasn't
Finger
good at
painting, not art.
Perfect. All right, we'll come back.
Well, I almost failed kindergarten. I got my kindergarten report. They made me dance around the room and pretend, you know, I had some crazy teacher, and I hated kindergarten. I would march and be defiant, and they said, this kid will go nowhere. So I hated every subject in kindergarten. Once I got into learning stuff, I was okay, and I turned out all right, I think.
Perfect.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I did my best at everything I could, but at different times in my education, I hit roadblocks. And I remember 8th grade earth science, of all things. 8th grade earth science was like the first sort of high school class we were taking at the time, and wasn't off to a good start. I sort of had to change the way I was approaching it, and got help from my teachers and from some of the older kids who were helping, and that was kind of a mark in high school for me to kind of step it up and change. The same thing happened to me in college, and the same thing happened to me in grad school. So I always had these sort of where I had to step things up and change what I was doing. And usually, for the kids who were listening, for me, whenever I had trouble, it was finding help. Admitting that, hey, I don't understand this as well as I'd like, and sometimes it was a very complicated thing, and sometimes maybe not what you would expect. But I think it's important when you're having those struggles to reach out and get help.
Perfect. Got it yet?
Math, actually,
There we are.
from like elementary school, and thankfully, and it was receiving help, the right kind of help. I mean, for the life of me, a fraction made no sense at all, and the multiplication tables, I just couldn't get it. And it was somebody making a game out of it that made it real to me.
Made it real. And Jane and Rafe, what were you guys? What did you struggle with?
I couldn't spell then, I can't spell now.
Spell checker.
Languages for me.
Yeah.
I've really struggled with languages. So
Perfect.
Thankfully, everyone here seems to speak English. So that's
Well, thank you for sharing that. And literally, any child or person out there watching this, you look at these incredible individuals and what they've achieved, and just know, even if you stink at math, you can still leave this planet and come on back a couple of times, all right? Even if you failed kindergarten. Thank you. Perfect. All right, we got some microphones in the room. Let's go ahead and do it. First question is coming from right here.
How are you guys? Thanks for being here. The question is, I mean, you made an incredible and epic journey around our planet, even through 45 countries, 6 continents, and outer the space. So I really want to know, what was the place or the country or the culture that impressed you the most, if it's possible to know that?
I think as you probably see from the show, from those little glimpses of the astronauts, we kept them in a black room in a dark room. We didn't let them out very much, but no, we filmed around their lives and their homes. But in terms of the location filming, the 45 countries that you're talking about, you know, we had a team of 6 directors who travel the world, shooting for each other and pulling that together with us. And I think probably the most hostile place was Dalol, which is a volcanic area in Ethiopia, which really does look like an alien planet. I think, Matt, you've seen it in the first show. And the colors are incredible, the greens and the yellows, and all of that kind of looks pretty on one level, but you kind of also know it's toxic as hell. I mean, this environment is super poisonous. And what's extraordinary is that there is life there. It's not life as we know it in the same, it feeds off heavy metals, but it's actually extraordinary, this environment. And it was 50 degrees. Most of the time people were there. The fact that it's sitting on top of a volcano meant that there was a lot of magnetic interference. So a lot of the camera equipment was glitzing all the time. The drones that we were using to film aerials were crashing, and it was like, that was challenging. That was a really challenging shoot for everyone on it, but spectacular.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your questions. Guys, regrettably, I got to let them go. They got 1,000,001 things they have to go do, so I got to wrap this up. But one more time, One Strange Rock, do not miss this. Monday, March 26th at 10/9 Central on National Geographic. Please make some noise one more time for all of our guests. Please.